Tonight we welcome to the show a very special guest, Jack Hues, lead singer and guitarist with the band Wang Chung. Originally formed in 1977 as the Intellectuals, they went through a number of incarnations until they started releasing music under the name Wang Chung. They then went to Geffen Records in 1984 and they changed the name to Wang Chung and recorded Dance Hall Days, which was a great hit in both the UK and the US. In 1986, they released Everybody Have Fun Tonight, which was their biggest hit, #2 in the US charts, and spawned the phrase Everybody Wang Chung Tonight. That phrase and track suddenly had a life of its own, appearing on a number of American TV shows. Now they're back with a new album, an orchestrated album that they've recorded with the City of Prague Orchestra, and Dance Hall Days, the orchestrated version, is out now on the 22nd of March. Hi Jack, how you doing?
Yeah, good, Stuart. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Great.
Just thought I'd ask you first of all, where did the name Wang Chung come from?
Yeah, we often get asked that. The long version, I'll give you the long version, is that I was reading this book on an avant-garde composer called Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. And there was a footnote in the book where he was talking about this thing, Wang Chung. And when I saw it written down, it just amused me because it did make me think of the sound of a guitar, which is one of the shorter meanings that we adopted. But the sort of the meaning as he gave it was that Wang Chung translates literally as yellow bell. And the yellow bell is this mythical bell that rings at the center of the universe. And our reality is one of the vibrations that comes from this bell. And the job of a musician is to harmonize with that pitch. So perfect pitch again is one of the definitions that floats around. But anyway, we thought it was a cool name and went for it.
It seems to have worked anyway. You changed it from Wang Chung to Wang Chung, and what was the reason behind that?
Well, after the first album, which we released in the UK, we were on Artefaktor Records for that. Obviously people were confused about in Chinese name and what's it all about, and also it is, well, when you read it, it's difficult to think how to pronounce it. So when we signed to Geffen Records, we thought about changing it altogether, but David Geffen said to us, no, it's a cool name, but why don't you just spell it like you say it, sort of Wang Chung. So that's what we did. It was a sort of pragmatic decision to respell it, really.
Why did you sign to Geffen? Why did you go from Arista to Geffen?
Yeah, interesting. Essentially, it was to do with the Arista album came out, and it sort of did okay in a kind of, we got a bit of a cult following, I think you'd call it, but it wasn't a commercial success. When the album had been out a while, we got a new manager, a guy called David Massey, who went on to do great things in the business. But anyway, he was managing us. And he basically said, you guys should sign to an American label rather than trying to get signed in Britain. And he managed to get interest from, well, there was 3 or 4 different labels. A lot of the interest was generated by the song Dance Hall Days, which we'd written in 1983, I think it was, but it was around the time that we were re-signing anyway. And I think, in Britain at that time, sort of early 80s, there was still the sort of hangover of punk, if you like, and I think especially the music critics were into bands that were like pretty raw, and we were producing a fairly kind of polished sound, I suppose, and that just went over better in America, and they seemed to appreciate the fact that we could play stuff in a way that British people couldn't care less about. So yeah, America was the place for us.
So how did the orchestrated album come out? That's coming out on the 10th of May.
Oh, great. Yeah.
We've got the Dance Hall Days orchestrated versions already being released on an EP. So how did the orchestrated album come about?
Well, we were approached by John Bryan, who runs this label, August Day. And we knew that he'd worked with Flock of Seagulls before. They've done an orchestral album. And when we were touring the States, we run into Mike Score and Flock fairly regularly, quite often on the same bill with them on gigs. And he was saying how great the label was, and what a great experience it was. So we decided to sort of go for it. We kind of were wondering how it would work out, but I think it's worked out really well, actually.
So how long did it take to record that album?
Well, in some ways it was pretty quick. The day, when you work with an orchestra, you basically do everything in one day because it costs a fortune to have them in the studio. But there's a lot of prep that goes on before that. So for probably 4 or 5 weeks before that, we worked with an arranger, and he would sort of mock up the tracks, using samples and stuff. So we had a pretty good idea of how they were going to sound. And also he's very experienced about what's practical and what's not, because working with say the brass part in a symphony orchestra is very different from working with, say, funk brass players in New York City or something like that. So there's certain things you can't really do and stuff. So you have to sort of cut your cloth with the orchestra, but of course you do get this beautiful big sound. And recording the orchestra live in Prague was great. We were over there for the day of the session, and it was an exciting place to be.
I have to say, there's been not quite a few, but a number of orchestrated albums have come out. There was the Midge has done one as well, which has been really good. And I say Flock of Seagulls have done one as well. And I think it just adds a different dimension to the tracks that you kind of know, and it just makes you listen to the song in a completely different fashion.
Yeah,
and it I think it opens up to a different audience as well.
I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, one of the exciting prospects is doing some gigs with symphony orchestras. I think ABC are doing some gigs using symphony orchestras, and there's talk about us doing maybe some stuff with them in the States, because obviously you can just we have the charts for the orchestral parts, and you sort of put the charts down in front of the players and they play them. They can sight read all that stuff. It's not like working with rock musicians where it takes them sort of 3 months to learn things. So yeah, I hope that will come up. We'll do some live stuff with symphony orchestra. That would be great.
So you're doing some live gigs in the US, I think in the summertime. Do you think the chance of that orchestrated tour in the UK, would that be a possibility, or it's just something that?
Yeah, I mean, we need to sort of generate some demand, and obviously the orchestra is an expensive kind of backing band, but as you say, I think it might appeal to people who don't mind spending a bit more on the tickets, and for the novelty of seeing people like us doing these songs, which I think always when we do live shows, people listen to Wang Chung and they're kind of like, wow, we never realised that you did all these different hits. They sort of think of us as maybe Dance All Days or maybe Everybody Have Fun, but there's also 3 or 4 other songs that over the years we've had sort of like quite a lot of exposure with. So it's usually a pretty good evening for people to come and see us.
Yeah. So how did you get to choose the tracks for the orchestrated album then?
Through discussion with John Bryan, really. Obviously, he wanted us to do the hits, and that was sort of fair enough. But he was also gave us a bit of latitude to choose some less well-known stuff as well. So Nick and I kind of looked into the catalogue and chose a couple of songs that we thought would benefit from the orchestral treatment. So there's a song called "Overwhelming Feeling" from Taser Up, which is the most recent album we released back in 2012, I think. And that was a sort of ballady kind of song, and the orchestral version of that is very cool. And we've also done "Space Junk," which was a song we did in the late 90s that was used in the TV show The Walking Dead, Series 1, Episode 1. So "Space Junk" is, again, in orchestrating it, we try to make it a little quirky, like choose some different instruments, rather than just putting strings on everything, so we were using a bass clarinet to play the stuff.
Right.
So we've tried to do a few little different things on it.
So America's, they really embraced you guys when you signed over there to Geffen. I think they kind of took you to your hearts a bit, and they went a bit mad for the Everybody Have Fun track as well, and everybody seemed to be wanting to do the Wang Chung, and it seemed to turn into a bit of an action rather than a band name. How did that sort of? Yeah, it was a verb. Yeah. How did that actually sort of make you guys feel, and how did that affect your careers back in the time when that was happening?
Well, it's interesting, because we split up around about 1990. I think we were there through the 80s, and I think a lot of this stuff came up during the time when Nick and I weren't working together during the 90s and stuff. So Friends, we were not Friends. Cheers, with Fraser Crane in it, and The Simpsons, and all these sort of things. So I wasn't actually aware that all these things were happening. So it was only when Nick and I started hanging out together again he sort of said, have you seen all these things? And he put together this. I think you can see it on YouTube. It's like a sort of all of the different usages, and there's a sort of volume 2 out now. It's like really a lot of instances of it being used, and so yes, I think it just sort of sustained the consciousness of the band in a way. Even though we weren't making music, this sort of sense of Everybody Wang Chung Tonight kind of just stayed around. I even saw it on a birthday card, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it on YouTube, check it out. I think you just Google on YouTube, can you tell me what a Wang Chung is?
Yeah,
and
right,
you'll get both parts of that, because it's really very good. You don't realise how many different shows that it's appeared on, and the names appeared on, and I think they've used the name for a bit of comedy value in some areas, but it's incredible. Going to the Breakfast Club, you did a track for the Breakfast Club as well. That the film. How did that one come about?
Well, we were approached by Steve Schiff and Keith Forsey. That's it. Keith Forsey was Billy Idol's producer and drummer. And they somehow got the gig to do the music for Breakfast Club. I think John Hues was very forward thinking about music, and he wanted to use contemporary bands and a contemporary soundtrack, rather than getting a Hollywood composer in. And they presented us with a song, and Nick and I, as we do, were kind of like, it's okay, but can we do this and can we do that? So we changed it around a bit, and we came up with this song, Fire in the Twilight, which we do on our live shows actually, and we kind of make it a bit more proggy. Really, it's got this sort of improvised bit in the middle. In my old age, I think I can do that stuff. And so it's cool. But it was a fun song to do. Very different working with Keith Forsey in LA, because we worked in the UK on Dancehall Days on that album, and that was like at Abbey Road, and we were in Abbey Road for like 9 or 10 months. I think it was very kind of concentrated, serious atmosphere. But Breakfast Club, we recorded that song like probably in an afternoon in LA in the studio, and Keith Forsey was really rock and roll, and kind of like it was not about getting it right, it was all about getting the spirit, and so that was really interesting working with him.
So you recorded the albums of some music at Abbey Road. How did that make you feel? Because the Beatles recorded there as well. Does that have to do a number about it?
Yeah, I mean that's why we were there. Chris Hues, who was the producer, who had just done Tears for Fears, The Hurting. Chris Hues and Ross Cullen, where that team, as it were, did The Hurting, and one of the reasons we wanted to work with them was that album. Nick and I both love that album. But also when we met Chris and Ross, they were huge Beatles fans, as were we. And so we sort of said, well, let's work together and let's work in Abbey Road too, where the Beatles did all this stuff. And that's what we did, And it was a real incredible experience. And at that time, the studio still had the old desk that the Beatles used for Abbey Road. Not the original tube desk that they had for the other albums, but they had a new desk put in when they made Abbey Road. And but it was still that desk with the old up and over faders and stuff. And so, I often used to just stand in that big room and kind of think, wow, some of the stuff that went on there, that music that was made there, just incredible.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
You guys have got quite a good social media profile at the moment. You've got a Facebook page, Twitter page. I think the Twitter page has been I think it's just coming to a bit more now, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just being updated, I think. I think it got hacked or something, but we're getting it back, so it's all up and running. But the Facebook page is pretty active, and we do, we are using it. So you do get through to us if you want to contact us.
Yeah. You've got your website, obviously, wangchung.com. There's SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. So you're kind of everywhere, really.
Yeah. And I think we're going to be even more prominent in the sense that all of our back catalogue is being remastered and reissued in the sort of latter part of this year. So at the moment, the Spotify presence is a bit limited, but that's all going to change in the next few months. So look out for that.
So the track Dancehall Days, the orchestrated version is out. What's the name of the new album then? I've got down as Orchestrography, is it?
Yeah. You say Orchestrography. Yeah.
Orchestrography, okay.
Yeah. It was actually this CD shop that I used to go to all the time in London. It was like one of the first classical CD shops. When everything changed from vinyl to CD. And this shop's called Orchestrography, so I said, well, let's call it that. At first, everyone was like, "What? How do you say that?" But I think I specialise in words that you can't say, like Wang Chung, and now Orchestrography. So
you say it better than me, I'll tell you that. So the album's out 10th of May. You can check out the video for Dancehall Days, the orchestrated version on YouTube. Just Google that, and it will come out. There's a proper video for that with the band, with yourselves and the orchestra, and a ballet dance as well. So
no, it's a cool thing to do because we filmed that on the evening of the Prague session. So we were in Prague for a few days. In fact, I spent a couple of extra days there just to check the city out. Go to some concerts and stuff. So it's a very cool place. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much for your time tonight, Jack. We're running out of time, so check out the new album on the 10th of May. It will be available on all the normal platforms, I'm sure, and also the single Dancehall Days. I think there's an EP out now as well, isn't it, with the orchestrated version on a couple of dance. So I think that's on Spotify. You can find that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you very much for your time tonight, Jack. That's much appreciated. And good luck with the new album.
Thank you, man.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.